before. He said, well, it's one of these big televangel places. They get over 10,000 people. And I said, have you gone there? Oh, yeah, I've gone there. What's it about? And once he explained from his perspective what it was about, I started thinking the one down in Dallas, the one in Atlanta, the one in Washington. I've seen these and been to some of them because I was interested in what it is. And it's more like bread and circus for those who are using religion and the dogma of religion and the spectacle of that as a way of solidifying their faith. There's nothing subtle about it. I mean, these people are more flashy than Reverend Ike here in New York, and I knew Reverend Ike. Very, the gigantic screens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And a lot of that has gone off to the religious right, and with that comes the faith-based initiatives. With that comes people who are voting for legislation that affects all Americans, secular, non-spiritual, spiritual, and religious, and dogmatic religious, and the rapturist, and the end of times, as if their religious beliefs should be mandated as law to everyone. I have a concern about this. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I have a concern about that too, of course. The so-called megachurches are a very mixed bag. And I've been studying. I have a couple students who are working on projects about the megachurches. They vary quite widely from one place to another. Now, there's no doubt about there's an element of spectacle there. People sort of like spectacles. I mean, there's the Super Bowl, and I don't have to go on, and religion has always had its element of spectacle. What is it that attracts people to such a large gathering? Well, take, for example, Saddleback Church in Southern California. I've studied that pretty carefully. It isn't just the fact that there are a lot of people there. All those people are very strongly encouraged to get into a small group sponsored by the church. There are groups that do tutoring in the inner city. There are groups that run food pantries and shelters. Oh, then there are other groups that are sort of prayer groups and book discussion groups, but they're mainly ministry, what they call ministry groups. The emphasis is getting out there and trying to do some good in your community, and they, at least at Saddleback, they make it pretty uncomfortable for you if you just enjoy the big show and don't enroll in one of these groups. And if you walk onto that, it's sort of like a big campus there in California, there are all these booths that are where you can sign up for one of these groups. They also have a variety of different, what they call tents, where you can participate in the service. You'll find this rather funny, I think. If you like classical music, or if you like the old hymns, or if you like gospel or spirituals, you choose a particular tent where that music is used, and then when the sermon comes on, it comes on in a screen, and everybody has the same sermon. But it's a variable approach to it. Now some of them are indeed very conservative politically, but they tend to be not fundamentalist. And the reason why most of them are not fundamentalists is that they know what appeals to a large audience. And you can't keep railing about particular doctrines, or especially sort of end-time scenarios like you referred to, and you can't be railing against gays and expect to have people subscribe. And for example, the big church down there in Dallas, the preacher there simply gave up years ago talking against gays, because he said young people are just not interested in hearing that. They just know too many people, including their own Uncle Harry and their cousin Bill, and they don't want to hear that kind of stuff. So I think one should be careful to reserve judgment, because they vary from place to place.
Okay, well, I just wanted your input, because it is a phenomenon. And my last question And we're running out of time. And if you could just consolidate your thought on this, I would really appreciate it. I have been asking all of my recent guests in this series why there's a lack of authentic protest based upon spiritual values against injustices we are witnessing by government and corporations, the Wall Street monopoly, the wars in the Middle East. Surely we are not seeing anything like we witnessed in the 60s among the baby boomers. Yeah. We had Sheldon Wolin on the air Monday. I'm sure you're familiar with him. And so we want to know your perspective.
Well, I've asked myself that same question. Yesterday, we had here a group of students, about 40 students who came together to talk with a guy who'd been a veteran of the civil rights movement, had worked with Dr. King, reminding us that Dr. King's real emphasis toward the end of his life was on economic justice. The Poor People's Campaign and some of the other things that he did. The students thought this really ought to be the next step. Why don't, confronting Wall Street. If I were a person who's been out of work now for 3 months and my unemployment's running out, and I picked up the paper and saw that the banks have not changed one bit. The banks and big investment houses are still at it. They're still trafficking in these very questionable
derivatives,
and they're giving these gigantic bonuses to people. I mean, I think one of the reasons, maybe the main reason why we can't seem to get it together to have the equivalent of a civil rights movement and protest against this gross injustice is people seem to be saturated with information, and everybody's walking around with something glued to his or her ear. It's either an iPod or a cell phone. The flow of information and misinformation coming in kind of sedates people, and they can't seem to focus. And this is true of my students here as well, on a particular thing, long enough to sort of get it together and organize and go for it. Now they did certainly for Obama. I mean, there's an awful lot of really quite remarkable organization on the part of young people and students during that. But then they sort of sat back and said, "Well, we've elected this guy. Now we can turn on our iPods again." I think that may be a large reason for it.
Okay, I really appreciate your work and the book, "The Future of Faith: The Rise and Fall of Beliefs in the Coming Age of Spirit." And congratulations on one of the longest careers at Harvard, and now your new retirement.
Well, thank you.
Professor Harvey Cox, the Hollis Professor at Harvard Divinity School, the oldest professorship at Harvard, and my guest today, Explorations into the Future of Religion and Spirituality, Conversations with Remarkable Minds. Back in a moment. Sugar is the new heroin, plus the latest on health and healing, information on your body that you're going to need to know. That's coming at you. And then in our second hour, a whole hour of your feedback, your questions, your comments on any of the topics you've heard or anything else you would like to explore. I'll also give you an update on a new show I'm going to be doing. It's actually my old show. My Sunday evening show from 8 to 10 o'clock is going to be beginning shortly. And it's only 2 hours about health and nutrition, answering your questions and giving you a new health update every Sunday night. That's going to be happening. I'll give you some insight on that. But let's just take one moment and go over to our phone and remind people that this Tuesday will be a historic day. Historic in that people from all walks of life, but a lot of nurses, a lot of physicians, a lot of orderlies, people live and work within the hospital communities and the nursing homes and all the other places where they're required by law in New York State to get a swine flu injection or lose their job. We're the belief that they should not be required, mandatory requirement. They